Hi, hello, and welcome everybody. My name is Alyssa. Today I want to make a tag video for you. I have not done this in a really long time, 9 months. It's been 9 months since I made a tag video, and I recently saw Venti on Caught Between Pages do the English major book tag, which was originally created by Hannah at Snow White Reader. So it looked fun, and now that I am like halfway through my master's in lit program, I feel that I can incorporate this into my identity. I can claim I am a lit major. So let's do it. Let's get to the questions. The first one is romanticism. What is a book that you wear rose-colored glasses for? A book that definitely deserves a reread. Bonus points if you share a memory. So I chose West with the Night by Beryl Markham. This is a memoir of the author's life. She lived in the early 1900s, and she was born in Kenya and was a horse breeder for a bit until she became a bush pilot. And eventually she was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean from east to west. This is a really, really beautifully written book. It is just like, her life is so interesting, but even more than that, the actual writing, the style is just gorgeous. Hemingway really praised her as an author. If that gives you a gauge, not that we need his approval, we're not a Hemingway stan here, but anyway, the point is, this is a really, really beautiful read, and I would say this is one of my favorite books. I also really think it's just flawless, so rose-colored glasses for sure. I listened to this book. I really want to buy a copy of it and read it again, but I listened to it, and I listened to it while on a road trip with my family through Namibia. So not that, that's very far away from Kenya, but still, like, the African atmosphere that she was describing really enhanced that whole experience, and those two memories of reading that book and that road trip are entirely intertwined. It was a really, really fun time. Question 2. John Mulaney was an English major. What is a book that you felt accurately represents an aspect of your life? Okay, so for this one, I decided to go with Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery. This one is, I'm kind of going in the literal sense, the redhead character of Anne, the fact that she hates her hair, that is something I strongly identified with as a child. I like it much more now. I don't know that it's darkened into a real handsome auburn, but like, I really identified with that as a child. This was a book that, well, really the movie, we watched the movie a lot growing up in my house, and we really, like, my mom, my sisters, we loved Anne of Green Gables. We also took a girls trip with my great aunt and my grandma, me and all my sisters and my mom. We went to Prince Edward Island when I was like 13 or so. So that was really, really fun. I kind of have fond associations of the whole book in that way. It kind of, I feel like a personal connection in my life to it. And that sort of that romanticness. I'm not as spunky of a person as I think Anne is of a character. I think I can be a bit of a romantic, and I definitely can get pretty fiery. Like, for the most part, I think most people see my mellow and very controlled side, but under the right circumstances I can get really feisty and really mean, in my opinion. Also, Gilbert Blythe is 100% my style. That is my type. My type is Gilbert Blythe, all the way. Question number 3. Oh, so you want to teach. Even though English majors are very versatile, this question almost always gets asked. Name a book that went more in-depth than you expected, or a book that surprised you with how many topics it covered. Okay, I'm gonna go with the Hank Green series, even though I know you guys are probably sick of it. Sorry. So I won't get super into it. These are sci-fi, contemporary, like First Contact, but they have everything to do with the internet culture and with like fame, sort of like contemporary issues surrounding the internet and stuff like that. I find them to be so interesting, and the reason I picked them for this question is because I think that A lot of people know of these books as YA and as, you know, just for their plot elements, but there's so much to dive into in these books. I think the author is tapping into some really, really interesting conversations, like ahead of his time. I also think there are so many avenues for like deep research. Obviously, if you can't tell, and I am writing my thesis on these books, so I really couldn't have given any other answer to this question. I think there's so many places to go in here, and if I ever ended up teaching in high school, I would push, I don't think I'd ever be able to like pull it off, but I would push for this to be the assigned reading, because I think there's a lot more in terms of like contemporary issues and like things that teenagers need to be introduced to. I think these books do a good job of that. Question 4, Symbolism. What is a book that represents something you love? For this one, I'm gonna go with Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. And as for something I love, this one's going to be a little bit of a journey, but just stick with me. This book I have a lot of sentimental memories attached to, but not in a way that has to do with the actual reading of the book. It has to do with the content and the subject matter. The story, you probably are familiar, revolves around Shakespeare's son and his wife. His wife's name in the book is Agnes, but in real life she was also, or like I've always heard of her as being called Anne Hathaway. And when several years ago, my mom and I took a trip to England and we went to Anne Hathaway's house in Stratford-on-Avon. And it is one of my favorite memories with my mom because she really, really loved it. She loved the herb gardens. She loved, the gardens are really, they make the whole place are just amazing, amazing, amazing. And I had actually previously gone there with an aunt and uncle of mine, and my uncle is a professor of horticulture. Ugh, mouthful, I guess. And so I had like all this information that I'd gotten from him when I was with him there, and then was sharing with my mom, and I'll insert some photos. It was just such a fun time. And this book really provokes those memories and like fond memories of my mom. And my mom is a big gardener. We have like lots of gardens at my house, and she loves them, like vegetable gardens and mostly flower gardens. She loves the flower gardens, and her and I would work in those gardens all the time. And so there's just like a lot of I guess like the fondness of like my childhood home and gardening with my mom and that trip with my mom, and sort of her sentimentality for old things and English things. She really likes that. So this one encompasses a lot of just like sentimental emotions and a plethora of several things that I love. Question 5, I think it's 5. Pretentious Paradox. Name of a book that you read and often bring up in conversation to impress people. I don't. Why do you think I have a channel and I'm talking to a camera right now? It's because I don't have anyone in my life that wants to hear me talk about books. So I never talk about books. This is not entirely true. I have like 2 friends who also love to read, and we'll talk, but we don't see each other very often. And I don't like ever try and impress them with my reading. But I guess the only thing that I think I like, the honest answer to this question would be Hank Green's books. Even though I guess I think the assumed response to this kind of question would be like a classic that like everyone would be like, oh wow, you read that. Usually nobody cares, and there's not like a natural way to bring it up into a conversation, but these books come up in conversation often, and I know that if we get on the subject, then the other person's gonna be impressed with me because I can rant about them, and I can talk about like so many facets of the ideas that the author is working with in terms of internet culture. So if I want to impress the person in terms of books, that's the one that I will bring up, even though it's not impressive because of its notoriety in and of itself, like, you know, a big, huge 1,000-page classic would be. Question 6, the art of BS. BS is the concept of arguing for the possibility of something to be true. What is a book that you feel like you could debate about for eternity? Okay, from the original creator's video on this, I got the concept that I guess sort of the angle this question is going towards is like something that could have been good but isn't. or like didn't quite follow through. And that's what I'm gonna go with, even if I'm maybe interpreting the question wrong. We're gonna go with that. And I have the book that I'm gonna go with here is Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, right? I read this book with such high expectations and I wanted to love it. I don't rant about stuff on my channel very often, and I read this pre my channel, but I could go on for days about everything wrong with this book. And a lot of that passion, that fiery passion, comes from the fact that it has so many reviews on Goodreads. It is so reviewed and so highly rated. And so many of these reviews are like, this book changed my life. And it is not well written. It is problematic. Oh, it drives me crazy. And this book would be a conversation starter for some of my dilemmas with the historical fiction genre as a whole, primarily boiling down to the point that I'm very frustrated with the fact that it feels the more that you actually love history and the more that you actually know history, the less you are likely to enjoy the historical fiction genre. And that really frustrates me. And that would be a whole thing, that would be a whole debate I could so go on about for a really, really long time. This is probably actually the only book that I have actually gone into debate with in real life. And I mean, it was a tentative debate because the other person involved really, really loved this book and I didn't want to crush their dreams, but also I like could not sit by and have this praised as like one of the best books ever written, when I was like, no, it's not. Great question 7, your favorite dead white author. Nothing is perfect, proven by classics, literature. What's a book that you know hasn't aged well that you either love or hate? Okay, this one is easy. It is Tarzan of the Apes. Hold on, Edgar Rice Burroughs. Oh yeah, I totally remember his name. I want an explanation for why his middle name is Rice, like R-I-C-E. It's fine. This one has not aged well. If you have read it, then it is very obvious why. We're probably all familiar with the story of Tarzan, the basic concept, or at least some like rendition interpretation of it. Yeah, I would say it's extremely racist. I would say it's misogynistic. I would say it's really rooted in colonial imperialism, like not only racism, but it's like scientific racism. You know what I'm talking about? Like, this is justified by science. Anyway, it's very, very problematic. So I do not like this book. I very much do not like this book, but it's a little bit more complex than that because my grandpa really loved this book and he loved Africa. He lived there in a few different places, a few different times, and he very much loved the people. Like he wasn't racist. I think it was maybe because he just was introduced to this as a kid, but I wish I could go back and have a conversation with him about like what he liked about the book, considering how poorly it's aged in other ways. So I have like this attachment of love for my grandpa, which is associated with the book, but the book itself I don't care for. Question 8, I think. Dark Academia. Who is the book character who you love but know in your hearts that you would not get along with? I'm going to go with Ava from Exciting Times. And I'm gonna pick this character because I really, really loved being inside her head and hearing her commentary on the world, like her little snippets of quick wit and observations. Like, I loved it from the inside, but I think from the outside, I actually probably would have found her a little bit of a boring person, in part because she's super pessimistic. I also feel that she lives ironically and like she's aware of that, but she still does it, sort of like seeing the world very ironically. And personally, I find people like that to be boring at best and for the most part really irritating, mostly because I feel the vibe from this type of person that almost as if they feel that they are very special because they're enlightened as to how the world works, and that anyone who is enjoying life isn't. enlightened as to how the world works. Like, you have to kind of have a pessimistic tone to convey the fact that you see like the sham of reality. And I don't get along with the type of person in real life, but from the inside of her head, I found it really interesting. That might even be like part of why I found her interesting, because it was just like it was relatable, but like also not exactly for me, so personally. So I'm gonna go with Ava from Exciting Times. And the last question, actually a bonus question, is what is your most favorite and least favorite book that you've read for class? So I'm going to pull just from books that I've been required to read for my master's program. So far that is like technically kind of a small list, where I like probably only at like 35 books that I've read so far for the whole program. I mean, I'm in the second semester, but this would be one of them. This would be a strong contender for one of them. And I would also say The Story of an African Farm by Olive Schreiner, which I recently did. I mean, my last wrap up had this video or this book in it as well. And this is a fin de siècle, the end of the century book, published in like in 1890s or 18, yeah, I think it's published in 1893, and takes place in South Africa, but it is considered the first feminist novel, and it's really rather obscure. If I'm remembering right, there are less than 300 reviews on Goodreads for this novel, and I think that that is an utter shame, like tragedy, because this is a really, really good book. It's really, really good, and it's also it's fantastic academically. I just really enjoyed it. And so this is probably the book so far in my class that I am the most grateful for my my like degree having introduced me to it, and that I have enjoyed. So this, yeah, probably this book. Really, really like that one. And then as far as my least favorite, I'm gonna go with The House for Mr. Biswas. Though this one wasn't that bad. I mean, this is a Nobel Prize winner, but it's about basically a man's life starting in like the first, I mean, spanning his life like 1900 to 1950 or so, something like that. It takes place in Trinidad, and I think it was interesting in terms of like being like reading something from Trinidad, but the actual book I just kind of found really boring, and I didn't care for the author at all. I really disagreed with like some of his ideas and opinions, which not all of them came through in the book. Some of the, like, I felt the book contradicted some of them in some ways, but he just seemed like a really elitist, snobby, bad person. So I really felt, and this book is huge, way longer than it needs to be, so it just felt like a huge waste of my time. So I think that's definitely the one I enjoyed the least. Well, there we are, ending on a negative note, but this was fun to do this tag. I really enjoyed it, and I'm grateful to both Hannah and Venti for creating the tag and then introducing me to it. So this was a lot of fun. I would tag people in this video, but I am not confidently aware of like which booktubers were or are lit majors. So if you were or are or just want to make this video, then consider yourself tagged, I suppose. I think it's a lot of fun. I'd love to see other people's responses. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in another video. Bye!